Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm videodiary, and shall we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today, where I've been relatively busy today, so, didn't have a lot of time to record, so here we are recording now, and I'm very glad that I recorded a two Talos Principle episodes yesterday, which I guess I will set the metadata for now. I just had, off the back of a D&D session, quite a interesting D&D session. To be perfectly honest, I'm not going to lie. But good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 11:09 PM on Monday, April 15th, 2024. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh yeah, I had a D&D session just to talk about the D&D session. It was like a like I don't want to say things because people who are in that campaign might watch this episode, but the first conversation they had was, honestly, I was kind of cracking myself up over. There was a reason, I suppose. It was so obtuse, and the players obviously understand there probably was a reason. They just don't necessarily know what the exact reason is. But having it was so very, very funny. Basically, it was just we were trying to have a conversation with an official, and the official was basically giving them nothing. But yeah, I won't say any more about that, lest I accidentally spoil a plot point. What I can say, though, is that apart from that, it was relatively just a mostly sort of rather relaxed episode, a rather relaxed session. But, I was oh, they haven't really had any combat recently. I suppose this is a peek behind the curtain. There were opportunities for combat for previous sessions, but they just, didn't do them. So, they never actually occurred. But then, so I was okay, I should try and get some combat in here at some point, because, despite this group being much more, I think, roleplay investigative than the other group, or than the average group, I suppose, in a D&D session, it's still nice to get some combat out there so we can feel strong, so we can do some cool stuff here and there with their mechanics, because there are a lot of combat-based mechanics, I think, in D&D. So I saw a good opportunity where they were basically going to get mugged, essentially, they went were back alley markets, and they said something, and which is probably when they said it, I was I don't think you should say that in a shady location, a shady part of town, and they eventually did get attacked by some people looking to get some money off of them, and if you're wondering what stats I used, there were 3 of them, 3 level 3s. And I was okay, I will use a bandit leader, and I will use 4 bandits, for a total CR rating of 2.5, which is probably about right for them, at least what I thought. Is they have 1 strong enemy, have a few ads around as well, and it started off going really well for them when one of the players used Thunderwave, and it killed one of the ads outright, and somehow the others actually rolled quite high. So the others are all put in 1 tap range, but then somehow, just through an unfortunate string or bad luck of 4 turns of a bandit leader essentially not taking damage, and him just doing him managing to hit them over and over and over again, it got very precarious. As one player was downed, then healed back up, and then the other player was downed, and actually had the first death saving roll of either campaign, which is a grand title to hoist upon oneself. There was a point where I was just I wonder if this is going to be a bit too lethal, because certainly when I planned it, I didn't want it to be a lethal encounter. I wanted it to just be a sort of an average level encounter, but sometimes the dice just don't roll in your favor, or in the case really not in your favor. As this bandit captain was fundamentally or almost felt invincible. Anyway, it was a very, very funny, and the players did survive. They didn't have any casualties, but one of the players is currently unconscious, unconscious but stable. And I was just whoa, okay, well, sometimes that happens. Sometimes the encounters are even easier than you might expect. I think I said for one of the session zeros, one of the pairs took literally no damage, but that was the first session, because I was just I guess I was probably pulling my punches a little bit. Now, by the time they hit level 3, I'm alright, you're in charge of your own destinies and fates now. So if you die, you die. I'm not going to try and do anything unfairly, but that was a fair encounter as far as I know. And it just dice just didn't go in their favour. And it was incredible to watch, I suppose. where the bandit leader basically like lived far longer than I ever would have expected. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm not exactly sure how this session's going to go, to be honest, because as I say, both groups are basically sort of like trying to unearth a mystery right now, but one of them is in a much more contained situation, and this group is in a much more sort of open thing, so they have a lot of like open doors exactly how they can try and explore things, and how they can put things together. It relies a lot more than putting together clues that they already have, and try and drawing conclusions from that, rather than being like, get to this place, roll an investigation check, find something which directly points to that. Because I guess if it's possible, I think, for them to entirely guess what's going on at the moment. I don't think they probably don't have enough evidence yet to confirm that, but I think we could at least speculate it. But it's hard, I think, to be able to know how much as a DM to give them, to be like, is this too obvious? Is it not too obvious? Is this going to ruin the entire thing? How's this going to play out? Etc. 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 I think it's okay right now. I think it's kind of going to be. It's kind of going to be a little bit tenuous, I suppose, and really we'll see towards the end, when I suppose some grand reveals happen, how successful I suppose it's been and how well telegraphed. The story, I believe, is still consistent so far. I don't think there are any loopholes in it. That might not be true necessarily, as I might accidentally say the wrong thing, or I might forget a detail and accidentally be like, oh, that doesn't make sense, and then according to the timeline. But I think thus far it's okay. Hopefully. But anyway, what are we going to talk about today? I'm not really sure. What we can talk about. I saw that Dropout released behind the scenes of the Bingo Game Changer episode, which is probably my favourite. It's either that's my favourite episode or maybe the official cast recording. They're both like really, really good. But Bingo is just, this is fantastic. It's probably one of the only recent ones which I was like, I had to rewatch it. It's that good, just to sort of like now not understand everything that's going on, but like with full knowledge of what's going on. It's just like crazy. Hollow Knight Silksong is now rated on Australia. Probably means it's actually releasing somewhat soon. Which is interesting to think about, because Okami is still, I think, about halfway through the entire Let's Play. So hopefully I can finish Okami, maybe in an optimal world I finish it just before Hollow Knight Silksong comes out, so then I can like simultaneously play Silksong as it happens. I need to work on something. I forgot about that, but I also haven't played like any of my games today. I've literally just been incredibly busy. But yeah, what can I talk about? I don't really know. That was something I was going to talk about. What was it? Oh, I was going to talk about the fact that solo leveling. I didn't realise, but solo leveling, if you don't know, is a manhwa ages ago, which is, I think, recently got like a surge of popularity because an anime has been released of it, where it's essentially just like a shonen sort of manga. I don't know what the Korean like equivalent of it is, but like a young adult targeted at males sort of thing, which it was recommended to me by a friend, and it's one of the few ones that I've actually stuck with, because I was like, I don't think plot wise it's amazing. I think plot wise it's fine. I think it certainly gets a bit more iffy later on, but its art direction like is fantastic. Like the way it conveys such movement and intensity, I think, with its battle scenes, it does pretty well. Sometimes the battle scenes get too messy, and sometimes they're not as great. But a lot of the early ones, like I was like, whoa, this like feels engaging, despite the fact that it's still images. It feels like I'm seeing like an action movie in my mind. But it's basically that sort of like isekai sort of. Well, it's not really an isekai world, because he's not travelled to a different world. He like lives in a fantasy world, but the general premise is that normally most people's powers are fixed. They get like awakened, they get like an ability, a supernatural ability or something, and it's fixed for the rest of your life. But this guy sort of breaks the rules where he can continuously get stronger over and over. Like he can continuously level up, hence solo leveling. And that's basically the entire premise. And it's something I read ages ago. Like I started reading it, I think, probably when around like chapter, maybe not chapter 100, maybe that's too early, but when some certain chapter was released, and then like I kept up with it like as it updated each week, all the way up to the ending point, the last chapter as it was uploaded. I might have even spoke about it actually now I think about it in Animal Crossing, I'm not sure. And I enjoyed it mostly. I would say its ending is a bit it didn't quite strike me the way I wanted it to, It wasn't like quite the ending I expected, but it was fine, I would say. It was serviceable enough because I wasn't reading it like that much of a plot. I guess I was kind of reading it, one, because it has really cool like action quote scenes, but two, it's kind of like, I don't know how to put it, it's kind of like not a power trip fantasy, but like a power fantasy, I suppose, in general, where it's just like, oh, imagine you're this super OP person. Like, I guess that's quite a lot of appeal of these sort of like shonen battle manga first place, is that not necessarily an overpowered protagonist, but a protagonist you know is going to prevail in the end because of their like super secret tech, etc, etc. It's fun to, I suppose, think about, watch about, because you can sort of live vicariously through that, being like, oh, imagine if you were the strongest for XYZ reason. I guess it, is sort of like living vicariously, and I think it's fun, and it introduces some like fun concepts, I think, here and there. Again, I wouldn't say it's all perfect, but I think it's still good. And I've heard the manga, the anime itself is actually pretty good as well. Like, it's pretty like well animated, which is cool. I'm glad to get some love. But out of just like random curiosity one time, I just like looked it up, and I was like, whoa, hold on, there's like 20 extra manhood chapters, which I didn't know about. And apparently, I didn't realise this, there was like an epilogue sort of like chapters released, and more like side stories is perhaps a better way to put it, where I can't really describe what the side stories are about without spoiling the ending of a thing, but basically it's like post-ending, I suppose. There are some stories which have a very different feel, I think, to the rest of the manhwa, but still hold the same sort of core elements, and it ties up. I'm not sure if it necessarily ties up like loose ends, but it gives an ending to a lot of things, which is nice. Like I feel like it was actually a very beneficial epilogue in this case, where I was like, okay, it made me like the ending more, or maybe that's just like time passing by, I suppose, and me like looking back with rose tinted glasses. But it was really cool. It genuinely was like quite a fun epilogue to read about, to learn about, to see what happened. And it was engaging nonetheless, and it was fun to read it again, I suppose, for nostalgic reasons all the same. And don't get me wrong, it was just cool when it happened. Like I would say, like web comics in general, what's a track record, I think, for the epilogues? The only one I really know of, which has ended, that I kept up with, was Homestuck, which had an epilogue, which is apparently... Well, okay, Homestuck's situation is complicated, because Homestuck, in my opinion, was pretty great for... Well, it was a bit slow-paced, but, like, pretty decent for the first 3 chapters. And then, like, Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 start getting, like, really good. And when it gets to, like, a bit of... Sorry, acts. And then it gets, like, a bit weavy and wavy, I suppose, through Act 6. And, like, the continuous Act 5, Part 2, Interlude 1 or something, etc., etc. Where the scope of it just expands way too much, in my personal opinion. Because Homestuck to me is always... I love a concept, like the world building of Homestuck. Even if it doesn't make 100% sense, I think it's like a really cool... or maybe it was my first introduction, I suppose, to kind of like isekai, quote, in general, but I think it does it in like a really cool way. In a very, I suppose, character-focused way, which is maybe why I like it so much. Because it's basically the world they get isekai to is kind of like shaped by the character in a way to test them into such that they have to prove themselves, essentially. It's sort of like a building's Roman tied together with it, and I love a lot of the concepts in it. And then Act 7 was fine. Like, Act 7 was beautifully animated. I don't love all the plot points which led up to Act 7. I mean, there's a big one, cough of, let's say, a certain character returning, which I very much disapproved of from a plot perspective. But, you know, again, it's not my story, it's not my place to say, it's not my place to write. I forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, and then I didn't really love that as a plot point. But, like, it ended, and I was like, okay, it was beautiful, but it was fine. It wasn't like it had a fantastic, like, midpoint, I guess, and then, like, it stuck the landing. It just didn't, like, stick it flawlessly, I suppose what I'd say, but I still enjoyed the time with it. Apparently there was an epilogue where there was... I'm trying to remember the epilogue, because there's an epilogue with a few images where it teased some things, and then there was, like, a written epilogue where it split into 2 timelines, right? Like a Candy timeline and Meat timeline. And I think that was sort of well received. And then it had Homestuck 2, or Homestuck Squared, which is basically like a huge epilogue story. And that, like, for the longest time very, very poorly received, because it just was nonsensical, apparently, plot-wise. Some plot points which I've heard about very much have made me go, what? That's a plot point? But But apparently it's like being revitalized by people now who actually have like a genuine passion. Well, I'm not to say that people before didn't have a genuine passion for it, but for people who are doing it, like are putting in effort in a way which apparently people like. I think people are just like, yeah, they're sort of like reviving it, which is cool to see. I don't know where that's gone up to. Fauna, you were sleeping, we won't disturb you. I don't know if it still holds that same sort of magic there, but yeah, epilogues. So that's my experience of epilogues. It's been apparently very up and down at Homestuck. I've not kept up with it. I don't know. One of these days I'll have a proper conversation about Homestuck, but I love the concept of the lands and the class specs of Homestuck and the way it ties in with personal character plot lines, I suppose. It's just like I guess it's a nice sort of mix of both narrative plus character focus stories. And it works in such a synergistic way that I'm just like, yeah, I like that. Yeah, I don't know what else I was going to say about this. Epilogues. I'm trying to think of like other things I've read which have like an epilogue. I haven't read many things which have just like straight up ended, to be honest. Scott Pilgrim did, but I don't think I had an epilogue really. I haven't really read many webcomics, now that I think about it. Most popular webcomics. Most influential webcomics of all time. XKCD. Okay, that's not really the webcomic. Web. I don't know. Maybe if I search Homestuck. Most popular webcomic series? Girl Genius? I've never heard of this one. Questionable content. Sunlight and Happiness Penny Arcade. These are like ongoing webcomics. Dinosaur comics. What happened to... For some which I have read, which I really love, but they never got to a proper finish. The person just doing them just sort of like stopped doing them because they couldn't continue it. One of them I remember is Helvetica. The skeleton one. I found that one super engaging. I love the art style in that one. But unfortunately, that is no longer being updated. 2017 was the last update, so 7 years ago. Jane Riedel, are you still doing anything? Maybe. You made Neon White? And you worked on Undertale? Or costume department? Oh, okay, you're a character designer on Neon White. I don't know what costume department means for Undertale. That makes sense. You know, I can very much see Sans and Papyrus in Helvetica. Wait, I guess that makes sense, right? Because that's also, they were also named after fonts, right? Something like that. The other one I was thinking of was Mona Halloween comic. Oh, The Last Halloween, that's what it's called. The Last Halloween Mona. About. It's on hiatus. Episode 1? Wait, it's a game now? Abby Howard. You did Save a Princess. That makes perfect sense. I saw Save a Princess, and the first thing I thought was like, wow, this kind of reminds me of Mona, The Last Halloween. If you did this as well, then that makes... I had no idea, but that makes perfect sense. Read now. What's the latest? What did I get up to? Crash. Do I remember this? I don't think so. When did this last get updated? Chapter. Oh, it's on book 2. Okay. So it is actually continuously being updated. Fair enough. I just haven't kept up with it for ages. There was also that, I don't remember what it's called. I recently found it again. It was like a Powerpuff Girls one. Like Powerpuff Girls. It was like Powerpuff Girls X. I recently found, or maybe it was Z. I recently found it again. Oh, Snafu, that's it. Snafu Comics. I remember reading this one. There was like a Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy one as well. I don't know if it's still being updated. Apparently it still is. That's crazy. Because that's been going on for like more than a decade. I can't even imagine what the plot point is about anymore. There's also Bittersweet Candy Bowl. How's that going? Actually, this one I've actually kind of caught up with because it doesn't have as frequent updates. So it's quite an easy read. Teen Drama. Ooh, a new chapter started apparently. What webcomics are there? I can't believe this person. Abby Howard, you're the one who made Slave a Princess. Or even with a collaboration. That's pretty cool. What was I going to say about this? I don't know. Can't think. Epilogues. So I don't know. The fact there's like side story epilogue content is always very entertaining. So I'm glad Solo Leveling got some, and I'm glad it actually felt like it added to the story, at least in my opinion. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this episode up here, so if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see you again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.